options available, but it also gave us an opportunity to hear from everyone, from, you know, how they felt about it and, you know, what was their intention. So even though it's called an opt-out meeting, that's not necessarily the direction that things are heading. It, like I say, it really just was to give us the flexibility and to be able to have the citizen input. So we're here to hear your opinions about whether we should opt in or out. And if you have specific questions, we'll do our dead level best to answer those for you. So if you have a comment, just please come up to the microphone and give us your name and address, and go from there.
Mike Malakoff, 109 Valonia Way, over in Osprey Cove. Actually, not so much an opinion. I just don't understand what's going on. So my question is, why would we opt out as opposed to opt in? Is there an advantage one way or the other for us as homeowners? And that's really understanding what this is all about.
Yes, sir. So, and anybody else, you know, certainly chip in and help me here, but the obviously from a straight homeowner's standpoint, that would have the option to homestead, it's definitely a benefit, you know, because it's going to fix your, you know, tax rate at a lower rate, because your assessed value is fixed and will not be going through these reassessments, you know, every couple of years, you know, and your taxes are going up as a result of your home's value going up. So what will, you know, it will still, as Mr. Horton said, it will still go up incrementally based on inflation as the state treasury sets the inflation rate each year. So you'll see, you know, 1, 2, 3% increases in home values depending on inflation. So, but you won't see the 15, 20, 30% increases that some have seen when their homes have been reassessed due to market changes or increasing construction costs, those kinds of things. Unless you do some sort of major home improvement. You know, if a permit is pulled and your house will get you add a garage, add significant value to your house, that will cause your house to be reassessed, and you will get a new base rate based on that new assessed value, losing the fixed, you know, exemption that you had from however many years prior. So the thing to consider from our standpoint, and the reason that some are opting out or saying they're opting out across the state, is that this is a, you know, homestead exemption for homeowners. Property tax values will continue to rise for businesses, small businesses, for apartment complexes and renters who can't afford homes. You know, the properties they're in will continue to increase in value, and rents and those kinds of things go up. You know, over time, you know, they'll be paying a larger percentage of, you know, the share of taxes than, you know, than the homesteaded homeowner will. So definitely a benefit for the homesteaded homeowner, but over time you'll see a certain, you know, potential increase in the businesses. And so, you know, we're trying to understand what that impact is, and also as the tax digest doesn't increase as much because we're not having assessments every year, when that digest is not growing, but even though our town might be growing, we have to look at how that's going to affect the budget and the money necessary to operate the city. And so, you know, the last few years we've had our millage rate has been kind of coming down. You know, we went from 6.1 to 5.439 in this current year. But, you know, if part of the values are fixed and we're not seeing that growth in the digest, then that millage rate may not go down as much or whatever. So, you know, so that's kind of the cons, I guess, if you will. I mean, some have argued that the state is taking control of the cities, municipalities' purview, to ability to control their sales. I mean, St. Mary's has the lowest millage rate in the county. Good management, I would say, you know, over the years have helped to keep our rates at a low rate. But the state is in some ways forcing this upon us or whatever. But and so some have disagreed with that as well. I don't, anybody has any other cons or reasons why not to consider it?
If I had to say the cons are, the first thing is that it's not a designed reduction of taxes. That's why it's being piggybacked with the FLOST tax. So it's just collecting that tax from somewhere else. So if that FLOST is not available as a mechanism, then it would be made back up for what you was describing in the millage rate. So we'd be giving a tax break here and locking in for that long-term homeowner, but then we'd be raising the millage rate on everybody. So your taxes still go up a little bit overall, but you're getting locked in at your assessed value. And then I guess kind of asides the other places that he said that would put a burden on businesses and different things like that, your military that moves into the area. Like that, those houses turn over every 3 to 5 years. So you may have a house right here where they locked in with county and city and everybody else, and then they've been there 20 years, and this home's over here, and they just bought it, or 3 years ago. They're paying probably double the taxes for the same valued house. So it does give a benefit for your long-term homeowner, but it is still going to raise the millage rate if we don't get the FLOST tax. So that's just one of the concerns. Not being able to participate in the FLOST. The county is voting tonight, and they're probably going to opt out. Not that they, to my understanding, they didn't really have to, but they decided they were going to take that course of action. And then Kingsland votes Monday. And I know that we want to make our own decision for St. Mary's, but it's just the only bearing they have on our decision is we know that the FLOST won't be an option. And then the other negatives is just a new program. They're forcing you into it. There's House Bill 92 that, as of a week ago, our state House rep said that it was still on the table, but as time ticks on, I don't think it's we're going to get to see that happen. But that would have given us until May 1st to make a decision, which I really would have loved that. And there's another thing been kicked around that they may actually give an out. So if it doesn't perform the way you want it to, you're not locked in forever, that it would give you a 3-year window to opt out at some point if you wanted to, if it didn't perform the way you wanted it to. So it is ever changing, and we've been passed down that the state may force us into this thing, within about 2 years or so. Well, if they do that, fine, then that's what we have to do. But maybe by then they would have worked out the kinks, because there are proposed changes that continue to pop up, so instead of being a guinea pig, if they force it in 2 years anyways, maybe it'd be a better program at that point. So that would just, since you asked what, the positives opting out would be, that's some of the ones that are, being considered.
So, one of the things with the FLOST, if that was an option, it would be a dollar for dollar reduction in the millage rates. So whatever amount of money that FLOST would bring in annually, would affect everyone's millage rates coming down. Businesses and homesteaded properties would all see the benefit of that lower property tax rate. But if the FLOST currently is not available, if any other municipality opts out within the county, and so that is one of the other, conversations that's going on in the legislature is, is there some mechanism to allow those municipalities that wanted to participate, to have the FLOST, even though others don't, but as of right now, the way the law stands, it's not an option for those who opt in if others within the county opted out.
Mr. Mike, you said, what is the con? And I guess it depends on what side of the desk you're looking at. For a homeowner, for homestead, you're saying, well, I'm getting a tax break. If you're on the other side of the desk, as Councilmember Lynn pointed out, I think it was roughly about $300,000 the city would lose by having that. So on our side, it all depends on how you look at it. And the biggest advantage we would have, see, the county has a freeze, we do not. Kingsland sitting high on the horse, being next to the interstate with tons of sales revenue, we don't have that luxury. So not being able to take advantage of FLOST, which is double lost essentially, hurts us, So I understand from the perspective of the homeowner, but also from the perspective of running a city. It's just two different points of view. And to me, and I'll just say it, I've gone back and forth and everything, and right now I'm thinking we should opt in, but it's not because I like it. It's not because this is good. And I think it's confusing, I think it's sloppy, and I think it puts a lot of burden on the municipalities and off the legislators who made it, and I think it's by design, just to be frank and just to speak my mind honestly. So when you're asking what's the pros and cons, I guess it depends on who you're asking the viewpoint from. Because if we don't, and it looks like we're not going to get a chance to take advantage of FLOST, you're looking at getting a tax break now and then raising the millage rate later. So basically, you're doing this to end up at the same point later on. So that would be the con, I think.
So again, just to understand, the floss part, if somebody in the county opts out, we all lose it?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Correct. And it's
And we
still-
need it the most.
And it would still have to go to referendum and have to be approved by the voters. It's not an automatic thing. You know, it would still have to be voted on if it was even optioned.
So even if we
Available.
opted in, we could still lose out on
Yeah.
Correct. Floss.
Well,
yeah.
we wouldn't get
And-
the FLOST. We would just opt in and then have to adjust, whatever
Right.
credits or whatever's not received, we'd adjust.
Are other communities going to opt out, which means
That's
we
what we're
lose?
hearing.
That's what we're
The
hearing.
county is voting tonight. It's on the back of their agenda, and they're voting tonight, but they're expected to opt out.
Which
And-
means that would end that.
And like SPOS, it's designed as local option sales tax. It pays to the county and it gets dispersed. We don't, the way sales taxes are reported, it doesn't itemize it per city or anybody. It's per county. And Kingsland's expected to opt out on Monday. But
Yeah, I'm not sure that the county opting out necessarily is going to do it because they have a better exemption in place already.
Yeah.
And so there was some language that said if you had a better, option that, but why they're going to the process of opting out when they already have a better exemption in place, I'm not quite sure, what their mindset is, but.
It sounds very confusing, and
You are correct.
that's why we elected you.
it's clear as mud. But yeah.
So, yes, so thank you very much for clarifying, or trying to clarify it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a particular question. So I'm building a new home.
Name and address.
Carmen Ware. I am a 205 Notgal Drive in St. Mary's. So I'm building a new build not across the state, on Isle of St. Mary, which I'm 6 months away from getting into a new home. So now I have a home exemption on 205 on Notgal. How does this affect me if I move in January? Am I going to lose my homestead or
You
I
won't
can
lose your
apply?
homestead, but it will
I can
be-
apply for a new homestead if this house sells, correct?
Right, the home that you're
Okay.
living in, your
It
primary
goes
home,
to
you'll
sell.
be able to homestead that. It'll just be, because it's a new build.
Yes.
It would be the 2025 value, whereas.
Yes.
if-
Correct, but I
if
still
this
can
goes
apply
in-
for a homestead
Yes,
on that one. and
absolutely,
You don't
absolutely.
lose that.
You don't-
It's-
you don't
it's
lose
a
it,
panic
you
in
just-
general, like,
Yeah.
we don't know.
You would lose the old one because you're moving from that
Yes, because we are
house.
selling it and somebody else gets that, and you are still allowed to apply for a homestead,
Absolutely.
get a
Absolutely.
homestead. Okay, that should be wide, yeah, a lot of people don't understand even that basic, so. When I say a lot of people, it's a lot of people.
Opting out of House Bill 581 doesn't affect any of your other homestead.
No,
that you're
so
already
that doesn't
able
go
to-
away if you do a new build, right? You're still gonna get that.
Correct.
that New tax.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds a bit better.
Dave Schmitz, 112 New Hammock Circle up in Chatelon. You're right, it's muddy.
Is Mike on?
Yeah.
Can't you hear me?
Okay.
Got your hearing aids on?
Go ahead.
It's my understanding right now that the state is about 60% of the state is opting out, and those numbers were expected to go higher. Is that true? Do you know?
We've heard large numbers, but I don't know how to confirm that one way or another. But I do know if you Google House Bill 581 opt out, there's just pages and pages and pages of counties and cities in the state opting out.
What about House Bill 92? Is that still off or?
The last I spoke with Sains was about a week ago, our House rep. He said it was still a thing that could happen, but it still hasn't. I've texted him today. I haven't heard back. I asked him for an update. And I
Because
haven't
that would
gotten
give
that
us
yet.
an extension until May 1st,
Yeah.
so.
Okay,
Sorry to interrupt.
That's no problem. If the county opts out, or I guess more succinctly, Kingsland opts out, and St. Mary's opts in, do we get the state's homestead exemption?
You get the homestead exemption, absolutely.
floss.
We just don't have an option to do the floss.
Now, opting in and opting out, is it just about the floss, or it's, if you opt out, you don't get the home? I mean,
It's
if
not
you,
homestead.
If you opt out, as Kingsland's talking about, they would not have this floating homestead exemption. It's floating because of the CPI, how it adjusts annually to inflation.
Okay,
It's not
and-
fixed
and-
like the county has a fixed. It's always the same value once it's fixed. This is called a floating homestead exemption because it floats based on inflation.
so I'm winging it here. I got my homestead exemption 20 or 30 years ago,
But that was for the county.
for the county, correct?
Yes, sir.
And my value's not changing.
That's correct. They have a fixed.
We passed this thing, and all of a sudden, my value is now 2024 value.
Your
2025
city taxes will be computed on the 2024 value. Your county taxes will continue to be computed on the original homestead value whenever it was 20 years ago.
That doesn't change.
But your city taxes that will now then only change by CPI, your value. So you'll have multiple assessments, assessed values. You'll have the original fixed assessed value when you did the homestead with the county. You'll have a new 24 assessment, fixed, floating value that is for this
With the city.
with the city. And then, of course, your fair market value will still, probably show up there as well, just so you have an idea what the value of your house is doing.
Okay, now, thank you. My impression was that when all this stuff started, and you had the first meeting, which didn't count as the first meeting, the basic feeling in the city was that you were gonna opt out. Now, I haven't asked anybody, but my impression is that you've changed your mind, and now you think maybe the city is gonna opt in. Why are you changing your mind?
So we didn't change our mind, that we just, from the beginning, we wanted to hear from the public. So the only reason we went through this to do the 3 meetings is because we wanted to hear feedback. And many of you added a lot of light to, we had already bounced around some ideas, and some of you that came to the podium shed a lot of light on some of those things. So I
Yeah,
think it
you're
was
right.
good either way, regardless of what we wanted to do. So we didn't change our mind, we just wanted to go through the process of hearing from you.
But if you'd had to vote when we first heard about this, you'd have voted to opt out.
Probably.
Well, I say,
I'm just trying to get a feel, because
Maybe.
like I said, the more you think about it, like I say, and obviously when you consider the number of actual voters who voted, 2-1 for this, in St. Mary's and Camden County, the
They
homeowners,
voted-
the homeowners want the exemption. They voted
they voted 2-1
but I don't think most people,
to consider it,
Correct.
not to,
well, they voted 2-1 for the Constitution to be amended to allow it. But I don't think most people necessarily drew that delineation, Dave, to understand that they weren't actually asking for the homestead. They were, what the bill actually, reads, it's in your packet there, it says, should there be one created?
Right.
It doesn't necessarily say,
And-
should we adopt
and as
it?
with most things that they put on the ballot for us to vote on, they convolute the wording so you
Sure.
can't understand what they're saying in the first
Right.
place.
Correct. I do agree with that, what you said, though, if I talked to a couple people, I voted yes, when it was on the ballot, but it was so we'd have the option to give time to consider it. I've talked to others who didn't understand it, but saw homestead and just voted yes, and others didn't understand it, and they said they actually voted no because they didn't understand it. It was kind of, muddy like we're still here, so.
So if this goes the way I think it's gonna go, the 24th, you're gonna opt in, and then Monday night, the 24th,
Right.
Kingsland's gonna opt out, and so we're gonna get the homestead exemption, but we're not gonna get the flossed.
We wouldn't have the option for the floss, so.
So y'all are gonna have to figure out another way
The millage rate.
to get the money back.
That's the millage rate, property taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Uh-oh.
Good evening. Lisa James, 981 Larkspur, or 918 Larkspur Lane. I just want to give a little bit of clarity and some background to House Bill 581 because there's a lot of confusion. This goes back about 3 years, and so, the impetus by the state legislature was because there was a lot of feedback from citizens that said our property taxes, so this is specific to homeowners, our property taxes are out of control, and essentially we're seeing extreme increases from year to year. So the goal was to find a way so that homeowners would not have these extreme increases in property taxes. Now, since 2021, there have been multiple iterations of different bills that were put forth by different representatives and senators at the state level. Most of those bills gave no options at all for the municipalities. Literally, it was like, this is what's going to happen, this is what you're going to do, and that's it. The Georgia Municipal Association, as well as the Association of County Commissioners in Georgia, said, hey, let us work with you to try to find some way for municipalities to be able to work with us while at the same time not be largely affected by this, this whatever we do. And that is how House Bill 581 came about, but it's not just, we keep talking about a homestead exemption. This is about reduction in property taxes and finding a way. Two things that came up during these discussions, and one was municipalities are leaning too heavily on tax on homeowners to foot the bill for everything in the city. So how can we incentivize them to not do that? That's where the floating local option sales tax, or FLOSS, or flexible is what they called it, the flexible penny came in. We can add the penny, it doubles lost. What they found through their studies was that 200 cities were able to lower their millage rate. The penny is meant to be used to lower the millage rate each year, not about the exemption on the homestead. If somebody sells their home, what the law says is you go to the previous year's your base value in the previous year. So selling a home does not majorly impact somebody, and somebody that's moving in, they're going to get the rate that the homeowner had in the previous year. That's what the law says. So I'm not telling you what to do or which direction to go in, but look at the purpose behind why the work was done by 3 different entities to help homeowners to be able to get some relief and to put more money in their pockets. Now, unfortunately, you're kind of tied, your hands are tied by what the other, entities in the county do. And what I would say, if anybody understands game theory, instead of guessing what they're doing, you should all be trying to work together to figure out how can we make House Bill 581, or what can we do if we all opt in and figure out a way to get that extra penny. So I would say look at strategizing with the other entities versus everybody trying to figure out what each other was doing, because you've got 3 very different entities here, that get their revenue in different ways. St. Mary's, by the way, with all of the upcoming all the upcoming construction and new homes coming in, the $300,000, I'm not sure, kind of where that number came from. But if you look at the taxes, the loss would essentially be doubled, and millage rate you will actually see increases, and you keep saying it's by CPI. What happens is your tax assessed property value cannot increase any more than CPI. Not that it's going to increase the same amount. If you look at the law the way it was written, it's to help keep those values from having those huge swings. They're saying at the state level, they will look at it, but it's based off of CPI, which is a federal number. So hopefully that was a way to kind of put some clarity into this. But again, I would encourage you to find a way to figure out how to figure out what the state was trying to do. Because if not, I can tell you that for 2 years in a row, I stood at the floor of this, I stood in the state capitol talking to these representatives to try to get them to not vote for options that would give us no option. So, and I can say that, if everyone else is opting out, why do you have to opt out? I mean, at the end of the day, you want to stay in favor with your state representatives. Because, you can't go to the state to ask for money if you're saying, by the way, we don't want to opt into this. So that's just my advice, not telling you what to do, but I hope that gives a little bit more clarity to the bill and how it works. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Butch Thompson, 1803 Shadowlawn Drive. Okay, from what I've heard here tonight, everything's pretty clear to me. If we opt out of this, then you're going to find another way to make up the loss on these property taxes. Okay, if we stay in it, the tax is going to be locked in or limited at the current 2024 rates for us homeowners, which is great. But that last slide that Mr. Horton put up there tells me that there's a big problem here, because we've got all these homes out there being built in these apartments, but we've got no retail, no commercialism, commerce coming in. So by opting in for this, for the homeowner, it's going to be great. For the other person, it's not. And I see it as discouraging business coming into Camden County, St. Mary's specifically, because we're right there on the border. We're going to drive even our residents across the border if we increase our sales tax, all right, to cover these losses. And I don't see any real benefit from that. I mean, I'm a homeowner, and I would love to be locked in and not have to pay have to pay minimum higher tax increases every year. But I'm looking around the community, and the community's going to die. That's the way I look at it. So you've got a big decision to make, and I hope you make the right one. We definitely need some commercialism, retail in here to help offset the tax base. But I sure don't want to discourage it and force people to go across the state line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I did forget two things. The one thing is that the goal around adding the penny on sales tax was to encourage municipalities to focus on economic development instead of just relying on their homeowners. With the floating homestead exemption, the city is still going to receive the value of that incremental increase. So if it's 3% inflation, like the current way that it works, let's say if it's $100,000 and the county has a freeze, your value is going to stay at $100,000. If the incremental increase is 8%, but they can't go any more than let's say the inflation is 3, you're going to be assessed on 103,000 in the city. So you're still going to benefit from that small increment. So I think that's important really to understand how that works, because you still will benefit from the increase. You're not losing totally. So.
Ken Jelly, 102 Saltgrass Trace, St. Mary's. Mr. Mayor, council members, general public, I've been reading this bill and rereading it and trying to rationalize in my mind why a group of House representatives would spend years developing a bill for the sole purpose, so it seems, of reducing property taxes of residents across the entire state with no other apparent benefit. Wow, a windfall bill being given to all of us from our state representatives. That's great. That really is. Oh, but wait. Let's review a few facts first. The initial referendum on the ballot was at best very, very vague. If I may read this proposed constitutional amendment that we voted on, provides for a general law statewide homestead exemption that may differentiate among political subdivisions. I'm not sure what that means. However, in quotes, shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for a statewide homestead exemption that serves to limit increases in the assessed value of homesteads, but which any county, consolidated government, municipality, or local school system may opt out of upon the completion of certain procedures. That is the entire text that our residents and citizens voted on. And then came 14 pages full of what this really means. There were no mentions in that referendum of property taxes being reset when the property was sold. And in this handout that was so graciously provided to us, it would indicate that the base year assessed value for a home will be initially set at the 2024 value of a home and resets whenever a home is sold or receives a substantial property change. So that sort of got slipped in. So when a property is sold, the sale price increase would drive up the appraised value and subsequently the assessed value, which would result in higher property taxes for the new owner. And there was no mention of the floating local option sales tax not being allowed by any municipality, even if only one municipality opted out. Sort of suggesting a punishment to those municipalities not opting out and maybe subsequently pressuring those municipalities to opt in. And there was no mention of this bill taking effect automatically unless municipalities jump through hoops to hold the required 3 public hearings before opting out. And all this has to be done by March 1st. And let's not forget to mention that this bill, once in effect, stays in effect essentially forever. And the bill leads one to believe that the basis for House Bill 581 taxation increases will most likely be based on the CPI, but not necessarily. The wording is such that annual taxation increases may be based on other factors. What other factors? Well, the factors, it says specifically, to be determined by the State Revenue Commission. It may be the CPI, and it may be something else altogether that we have no idea of. So all of these things, I call these hidden trip levers that we're falling all over right now when we're talking about this bill. Seems like there's a surprise at every turn of a page, something new, something different. Well, is there still something we don't understand about this bill? Trip levers raise a red flag for me, a big red flag. Why was the public, our residents, not initially provided with easily accessible facts about this bill? Now, the fact that many municipalities are deciding to opt out and complaining that the eternal lifespan of this bill is unpalatable, and that the bill automatically takes effect by 1 March, which is a very short fuse, has got the House of Representatives wiggling in their seats and now rushing to change the auto-effective date to June or May, and then change the never-end date to about 5 years. So all of this makes one think that they're being pressured by some outside influence, which raises further suspicion that we collectively as residents don't have the full story on this bill. The fact that when you sell your home and that value resets was brought up this evening, and that reset is going to be passed on to the new property owner. Guess what? We're about in 3 years to have an awful lot of new property owners. And when those individuals get transferred, new property owners come in, and now their taxes are high. And that's nothing more than a domino effect. Maybe that's one of the hidden trip levers. Thank you, gentlemen.
Keith?
Thank you.
You gotta wait on me. Jerry Bumalo, 805 Riverview Drive West. If you want to know what opting in will do for the taxpayers in St. Mary's, all you got to do is look at what happened in 2006 when the county locked our appraised values down. You're paying a lot less county taxes now. If they hadn't have put that exemption in like you have the option to do here, from 2006 to now, you wouldn't be living in St. Mary's because you couldn't afford to live here because your county taxes, instead of being $1,700 or $2,700, will be about $12,000 now. Because that's where we're going if we don't opt in to this now, because you see no end to this exponential increase in city taxes. And the only way to stop that is to opt in. And you're not going to shoot yourself in the foot and not have funds to run the city because you have your millage rate option to deal with that. So if it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out, like this guy said, that his county taxes are locked, and that's good for him. And the county is still functioning, and the city will still function if we lock down this stuff. And the only difference is you're going to have the CPI increase. But that's essentially the same thing, like I said, that was done in 2006 by the county. If they hadn't have done that, we'd be in a world of hurt right now. And if you guys don't opt in, we're going to be in a world of hurt with taxes here.
They can opt in, but then it doesn't matter if the others opt out, so I don't see that.
Okay. Mark Fouts, 310 West Bryant Street. So as I understand it, the county is going to opt out, so the floss is gone for us right now, correct? Okay, that's off the table. according to the handouts, it looks like the values of the properties in St. Mary's have increased greater than 100% in 5 years, in the last 5 years. So we've already got a pretty good tax jump right off the bat. According to the handouts, it looks like we're looking at about 3,700 projected new subdivisions within the next 6 years. So all of those will be assessed, at the current value, which means they're going to be pretty expensive properties all the way around. So the city, once again, is going to have what looks like to me a substantial increase in property tax revenues based on that over the next 6 years.
We'll remind you that a lot of those properties you're talking about are within TADs, and so for 20 years potentially, a lot of that revenue will go to the infrastructure, for that development, not necessarily come to the general fund. So
Some of it's going to come to the general fund, is it not?
some of it.
Okay, we need a calculation on it to find out just how much we're talking about. That's a generality that's affecting all of us property owners right now. The county's opted out of it, so that means that the county will continue to assess our properties as they currently have. So my property, I live in downtown area. My property increased about 30% in 2022 and 40% in 2023. That's unsustainable for me. And that happened to a lot of the downtown area. We happen to have a very wealthy person who's buying up downtown properties right now. We don't know what's going to happen with him. He could jack these prices up again. So we're looking at 30-40% increases in our property values because the county is still going to assess them the same way they are right now. That's unsustainable for most of us. We need some way to control our property taxes. That's all there is to it. And I agree with what someone else said. If the city's planning on running strictly on property taxes, that's not the way it ought to be done. You guys are smart. You know how to create other methods of revenue besides property taxes. Anybody can raise property taxes. That's a simple thing to do. But there's other things we can do. I understand that if you opt in, then there's a lot of people that are going to have their basis of their taxes increased immediately. I don't know how much that's going to be based on city taxes and what have you. But I firmly believe we need to do something to control our taxes. I've tried filing exceptions with the county twice now, and basically you almost can't do it unless you find an error that the county has made in your assessment. You're just shooting in the wind because they don't want to listen to you. They don't care, and that's just because a lot of people want to come in and buy and they have a lot of money. We're taking a hit on it. And there's a lot of people, I don't know how many, you may have some kind of statistics in here about how many retirement people are in this city. But our incomes don't go up 30 and 40%. We're on fixed incomes. And there's a lot of us. So, it becomes something very important for city government to say, it's not right to keep jacking up property taxes just because you can. We need to find some other method of financing this city. And with 3,700 new subdivisions coming in, there ought to be all sorts of opportunities for that. As I say, there's a wealthy guy coming in here. I don't know what his plans are, but somebody ought to find out what the heck they are. Reach out, talk to him. Doesn't cost anything to pick up the phone. In fact, try to find out what's going on. Maybe he's got some plans for making some commercial stuff here. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of land. There's still land at the airport. I wish we could have gotten an Amazon distributorship in here or something like that. We do have a new lumber yard in here. That's doing well. All the other stuff that's coming in, you know, we talk about the movie studio coming in. I don't know when that's going to happen. You know, is that 10 years down the road? Is it 20 years down the road? You know, we talked about aquaponics coming in here forever. Never seen a thing done. We talked about the marina up there at the old mill site. The only shovel full of dirt's been turned is when you guys turned it 3 years ago for the grand opening. Nothing's happened. So, you know, there's got to be some other ways for people to think about financing the city other than just property taxes. And I know I've kind of jumbled around, and quite frankly, I'm not sure which way to turn on the darn thing, because I know I want my property taxes, I know I want a cap on them, because 20-30% is unsustainable. But with the county doing one thing and the city doing something else, I'm really not sure just where you're going to stand on this thing. I'm still confused. You can tell I'm pretty confused on the whole darn thing. And I think most of the other citizens are confused too. So that's all I'm going to say.
Can I answer this question?
Yeah, please.
I hope I don't have to keep introducing myself each time. So to answer your question, the county opting out only changes their particular floating, their freeze. It just keeps them within the freeze. The other part of House Bill 581, which no one here has mentioned, is House Resolution 1022, which was passed by the state legislature. House Bill 581 is the enabling legislation that complements House Resolution 1022, which is property tax reform, which includes how appeals take place. It also includes how we actually set the millage rate. So the county will have to, their assessor is not going to assess the property values in St. Mary's the same way they would their own if they opt out and we opt in. So if St. Mary's opts in, the county is opted out. They still have to follow the guidelines around not increasing any more than the consumer price index. So they can't continue to tax in the same way that they have. What House Resolution 1022 does is it creates a uniform way across the entire state for taxes to be processed, or how that process works. So does that answer that question?
No.
I'll talk to you later about it then.
I work on ducks and bunnies, and that's way over ducks and bunnies.
Nick Harris, 102 Hamlet Circle. I think for 3 meetings now, we get the briefing, and we're just isolating everything on the actual bill, and whether it was done right or wrong, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, we're looking a lot of times in the rear view mirror, which is very small, and we need to look at the front windshield and see the future. In a lot of comments, taxes do need to come down for some of these homeowners, especially, well, I'm considering myself getting at the elderly level, but for other families, if we don't do the right thing, we're actually going to force them to lose a home maybe because their retirement isn't, raising or going down or getting better, but their taxes are, and they're going to be house poor. But I hear nothing about, to me, as a new entrepreneur here in St. Mary's, is what about our economic development? I mean, we're just isolating ourselves on the house in the taxes. You all are elected officials. We hopefully elected the right people, and nothing in the leadership world is easy. There's always a challenge, but challenges are opportunities. So it's incumbent upon the city government to go out and solicit and bring those businesses in. I personally don't think we need big box stores here to help that. I mean, we've got so many empty buildings, but if we all the money we have spent with, the leadership up there in Athens and consulting things, there's a lot of small towns that have been refurbished over the last 10, 15 years that were dying, but they did retrocultural, they went back to the past, but utilized the technology of today. We're just sitting here saying, okay, we're house poor because our taxes, but I see no great effort in economic development. And to me, we should be soliciting, because we have a lot of good things here in St. Mary's that are very attractive to medium and small business owners. And when you say nobody comes, well, the reason why nobody comes and spends is because really, outside of just walking around and looking at a lot of blight, there's really nothing to do except get on a boat and go to Cumberland Island. That's our mistake there, because it's up to us to make the city look vibrant. And for the past year, I've heard we can't have our cake and eat it too. Everybody says we don't want growth because we don't want traffic. Well, then, if you don't want that, then just don't be griping about when the taxes go up, because you've got to make that switch to 60-40, where the businesses are paying the majority of our revenues and we're paying the 40%. But it's not an easy task to do, but hopefully we're going to do the right thing. But I really think we've missed a big portion in 3 meetings, because I've heard nothing about economic development and how we're bringing things in, or even if anybody's looking to bring something in. And just because, the Dodger shows up and buys a bunch of land doesn't mean anything, except that could take the value of property up. So it goes back to the people that spoke. Well, what is the plan? We have to be smarter than that. We have to know the plan. And then I think we need to start reaching out to medium and small business owners and have a plan. What is a business that would be vibrant and successful here? Because when we opened our business, I've seen 6 or 7 businesses too that kind of started with us, but they've already gone or closed, or they're struggling, just barely making it. And it's because of taxes, rent, or what, nobody's coming in to see it. Well, the reason why nobody's coming in to do it is because there's not a whole lot to do in St. Mary's, even though it's a pretty place to be. So, food for thought. Thanks.
Thank you.
John Smith, 400 George Street. What I don't understand, the county's got me frozen in, grandfathered in, but the assessment every year keeps going up, and my taxes keep going up. And I realize when the county keeps putting assessment, the city bases my taxes on what the assessment is. And my place ain't worth $353,000. It's more than that, but $353,000. Where does it end? Because I will tell you, with the retirement system I'm on, they gave me a $50 raise this month. Well, the insurance is with the retirement went up $51. So that took that plus another $1. So I understand the taxes just keep going up, but the retirement starts coming down with every raise you get. So my question is, how come the county can give me grandfathered in at this amount, but yet the assessment keeps coming up, where the city keeps, charging me according to the new assessment.
I mean, that's exactly what we're here for, Joan, is to decide, you know, whether to opt in or opt out, and to have that exemption, that frozen assessment, you know.
Yeah, I want to keep my homestead exemption because of the situation.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So if there's no one else who wants to speak or has any questions, we'll adjourn this public hearing.